We are so back. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry Bees. Now, before you start saying something in the comments, I know I was a little bit perhaps out of pocket to make a clickbaity negative title about Linkin Park, right? For my last reaction on Living Things. But even with the time that has passed since listening to that record, I still do feel that that album was probably the most lacking for me in this Linkin Park journey. And again, if you haven't been here since the beginning of my Linkin Park journey, go ahead and watch some of those videos. I started out as a Linkin Park hater of sorts, right? Never really got into them until I sat down and really got a handle on their music. I learned to listen to Linkin Park. Mike Shinoda wasn't really my favorite part of Linkin Park at all, but really appreciating the direction that he had taken the band in, and actually kind of liking some of his raps. It was kind of Mike Shinoda's rapping that I wasn't really the biggest fan of. I've come to really enjoy a lot of aspects of Linkin Park, a lot of their songs, and I just think that, Living Things, maybe it's a me problem. I had expectations and they weren't met. But maybe that's all for naught, folks, because today we are on another stop on the Linkin Park journey, because today we have The Hunting Party. Now, I've heard that this album does get heavier. I don't know if the whole thing is going to be heavy, but as maybe some of my criticisms on perhaps the last few Linkin Park albums, I don't think that it's been missing entirely, but definitely the share of the soundscape being as heavy as they were in Meteora, in Hybrid Theory, that's definitely been the case. There has been less heavy. I do love it when they get heavy, but I also really like seeing the more electronic elements that they brought into Minutes to Midnight, into 1,000 Suns. So I guess what mostly I'm looking for, I'm just looking for progression, or maybe calling back sounds from maybe those heavier albums to see if they can put a spin on it. Another interesting thing is that there seems to be a lot of features on this album, so we'll get into those as we come. But before we do get into it, please let me know your thoughts on my thoughts down in the comments below as we listen to this record. And if you want to see me go live, if you want to see any of these reactions uncut before they come out on YouTube, go ahead and just click all the links in my description and you'll get exactly that. So this is it. This is The Hunting Party by Linkin Park. This is their 6th album? Holy shit. We've been doing this a long time. How many? 45 minutes, 15 seconds, so a little bit shorter of an album than from what we've been doing recently here on the channel, but 12 tracks nonetheless. Let's get into this first track, Kings to the Kingdom. Kings to the Kingdom.
No control, no surprise, the futility.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Tell me what's worth fighting for.
No control, no surprise.
Different method, but I still could bring the pain. So y'all all get that same flow. I got that insane flow. High as y'all can get, you never really in my range. So yes, I'm half Anglo, half fried panko. All prime time, I'm a
Okay, so maybe we get a transition in the next track there. Oh, man. Holy hell. This isn't to say that I only like Linkin Park when they go hard, when they go fast. They get a little thrashy. They get very aggressive. Because I like some of the softer shit, right? I think... like all the things you took away, or like whatever the last song on Minutes to Midnight was, where I think that had like some of the best songwriting in general through Linkin Park's career so far. That was the highlight on that one for me, but there is something to be said about missing just that balls to the wall sound from them. And this one was no different. I'd say this and Given Up are two of some of the best openers just immediately. They get me just so jazzed. And folks, I'm listening to this. This is being recorded the day after Ozzy Osbourne has passed. I'm a big Ozzy fan. I just talked to chat for like 50 minutes about how much I miss Ozzy, and we kind of reveled in that. And I needed something to kind of take me out of that, right? Mourning's fine. Mourning the death of an idol is fine, but you got to bring it back home at some point. You got to listen to something else, because I've been listening to Ozzy and Black Sabbath for about 24 hours now, and this was just perfect. And you know, you get those blast beats in, and we've heard blast beats from them before, just like absolutely destroying the snare. Like, holy cow. And of course Chester's gonna scream over that. That's not surprising to me there. But again, this song, which honestly could have just been a minute and a half, they're including those peaks and valleys, those softer parts to let us down just to bring us back up. So you could look at this like, oh, it's just fast metal kind of punky shit and bleh. But no, it's exactly what I kind of wanted to hear. You know, if we were going to get back into a harder sound, are we going to have a little bit more experimentation with the production? And in this case, I think more so than anything, the composition here, just in how the song is laid out and how we get from beginning to end. And like, it's so aggressive, and then we get that kid. Like, I was not expecting that at all there. Yeah, so we're just going to continue on here. Really liking it so far. Now, there's a few features here on the album, and we're going to get into one with the second track. This is All for Nothing featuring Paige Hamilton, and I didn't know this, just had to Google this. Paige Hamilton is the singer for Helmet. Helmet is a phenomenal band. I think their debut album is absolutely terrific. They got a lot of other great jams for me, a lot harder, and then as they kind of go on throughout their career, they get a little bit funkier, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. I'm excited to see the crossover here. This is All for Nothing featuring Paige Hamilton of Helmet.
Why you debate what it could take to instigate a war? Yeah, I've been hating more than time I wasn't hated for. There's nothing they can fucking say they didn't say before, and you can never see it. Your battle's not mine, wanna see understand. You say you're gonna hold me to your word, and if I sell myself away, you say I'll have no debt to pay. You betray, there's no other way to say it, so let me break this fucker down for ya. I really don't know ya. You talk, but let me show you where to put your paranoia. You joke. I do what you demand. You'll let me understand. Your way of being.
Nice little soundscape to play us out, maybe? Yeah, so with this one, again, I'm gonna hit it with an air horn. This is like maybe an aside, maybe not a point about this song, but a big criticism that I had from the last Linkin Park album that we listened to, right? Living Things. I didn't like how it was mixed. I do appreciate that they change up their sound. They go for a different sound. They try different things. They try to progress. They try to evolve. That's inherently interesting to me. Just sometimes, don't hate me if it just doesn't hit for me, but it was definitely a creative choice that they made on that last record. That is not happening here at all. This is so clear and nice sounding. It is just filling my ears up, both channels. And it's not muddy. So, you know, like there was a lot going on early Linkin Park, right? And this song, the last two songs, like I can tell that there's a lot of things going on, but it all sounds very balanced out and in my face. So they kind of got both of like the best of both worlds there. Now, I will say this reaction is a little bit different from most of my reactions. I'm not playing on Spotify. I'm playing from FLAC files here. So the quality is just going to be a little bit better in general. So maybe I have to take that back. Maybe I have to get Living Things, the digital download for Living Things and try that out. But so far, I'm loving how this is produced so far. And of course, they're bringing back that energy, like I said, right, when we listen to Kings of the Kingdom. Page Hamilton, I wasn't catching the voice of Mr. Page Hamilton, but it seems as though this was more of a Mike song anyway. And I've grown to really appreciate that sound coming out of Linkin Park. And so maybe Page was just on the guitars there, just kind of adding another layer of distortion of guitar, just like power and grit, which following the first song, which was like, boy, you better get ready because this shit is just going to be insane. It's starting out really nice. So maybe it does call for another guitar to be added on top of cacophony, if you will. All right, moving on. Really digging this so far, guys. We got Guilty All the Same featuring Rakim. I do believe that is the same Rakim of hip hop legendary. Anyway, this is Guilty All the Same.
Diggity dog. Breaking. Diggity dog.
The fuck was this? What the hell was this? It was damn good, let me tell you that. So we do have some talk here in the chat. Let's see. This is basically an FU to people asking them to do the same songs over and over. Imagine having Hybrid Theory, but in 20 different fonts for 20 years. Those kinds of people are poisoning creativity. The other song was a jab to record labels. Yeah, that's what it really did seem to me like, obviously record label, like, oh, do that again, right? And again, one of the things that I've appreciated about Linkin Park in one way or another, I don't even have to like it, but as long as you progress, that's interesting to me. And there's progression here, but there's also just like trying new things. I think with Linkin Park, you can make a really solid argument that, we're very much one of one. Maybe like other new metal acts, like if you want to make the comparison to maybe Limp Bizkit, where they're doing like the whole rap rock thing. But as time went on, Linkin Park kind of developed their own little sound, getting the rap, the rock, the metal, the hip hop, the electronic into their stuff. Whereas this, they're like trying out different blends of metal. Like this came across to me, elements of this song came across as very like power metal-y, where they're kind of going up and down these scales. I'm like, is this Iron Maiden? It's giving me like heavy Iron Maiden vibes. And then where they're like switching up like the rhythm during it, so they're playing around with the timing of everything, like so hardcore on its face, but it's giving like even like maybe a little prog metal. And the song has Rakim, which is like the craziest part of the whole thing. They're talking about greed and dirty money scheme, as Rakim says here, in this talk on greed. So it really does seem, maybe jab at record labels and record companies. People have been saying that this is their least favorite album. Are we hearing the same music? Because this slaps. I'm having a grand old time because it's not just going back to that original hard sound. They're incorporating like it's even quite thrashy so far. And it's not like to say that they're foreign to thrash. But it's giving more of what you think of as maybe thrash metal, of like power metal. Like this even screams to be more metal than the first two albums. And I didn't know that like people were complaining that they weren't going as heavy during like Meteor, because I thought Meteor was like a perfect blend of sounds there. And even maybe to a lesser extent Minutes to Midnight. So I'm actually, now this is great. Front load it with some heavy songs, some real balls of the wall tracks, and then maybe we get a little softer. Will that happen with track 4? Will that happen in track 5? I don't know. But that's what I'm looking for with an album, just like to help the pacing along, to help make it a little bit more dynamic. And they've proved themselves to have a great handle on that sound. So I'm really looking forward to getting to these other songs here. So we move on here, folks, with the 4th track, The Summoning. Doing it before Sleep Token was cool. War. We are so back. We haven't been so back. Oh my god. All right. What the hell was that pause? Where was that? I thought I had the right count with the beat to like really like, you know, move back with the music as it came back in. And they really caught me off guard right there. As someone dutifully said in the chat, W pause. W pause for sure. You know, we haven't heard like that much of a straightforward like punk sound out of them, except for I again, excuse me, I can't recall. There was that one like very heavy blast beats kind of hardcore song that was either on 1,000 Suns or Living Things, seemingly came out of nowhere. But given the heavier nature of this one so far across these, you know, 5 tracks, maybe not the summoning was more of an interlude than anything else, the rambunctiousness, the aggressiveness of the punk sound, you know, it's very bare, it's just quick, get it done. They're right over 2 minutes. That's a punk song in time, but it's a punk song in practice as well. And you know, Chester's being Chester. And you know, I'm hazarding to say this as we are only 5 songs into the album so far. Maybe we don't get, you know, the dynamic pacing that we have maybe out of some of Linkin Park's other albums in the forms of heavy, a little bit softer, a little bit more accessible, a little bit more electronic, that we see in some of their hit songs. But they have, even in this song, right? You know, there's really no space for a slow section, a breakdown, if you will. But just playing around with the timing like that, they're making the individual songs a little bit more dynamic. So moving on, we have the Wastelands, or just Wastelands.
Say to tell the player back, slay him, leave him laying on the pavement, bang, fade to black. In the wastelands of today, where there's nothing left to lose, and there's nothing more to take, but you force yourself to choose. Those done, they're talking for just talking, but meaning they got none. None of them come proper, they talk like a shotgun, but how many got bred with integrity? Not one, so no, I'm not afraid to see you suckers hold a blade to me. Ain't no way to shake the ground I built before you came to be. Take it how you take it, I'm the opposite. In the wasteland of today, where there's nothing left to lose, and there's nothing more to take. In the wastelands of today.
I'm really liking this idea of these like little outros they got going on, and they're not very long. It just adds a little something to it. It just adds just a little tinge of interest there for me. Well done once again. This was a little bit more straightforward. Obviously, you know, in the last third of this song, we get like a little bit of a breakdown. Chester's kind of isolated with those vocals. You know what? I know that this one isn't like the happiest song in the world, so your hope turns into fears in the Wastelands of today. To me, though, like, obviously they're staying very consistent with the heavier sound here. I feel like this one would go great in their more electronic sound, maybe like a softer electronic sound. Like this gives me like the same kind of energy as Burn It Down in a way, just because the chord progressions were very simple in this one, and I feel like it would go well with that electronic sound. But really liking the dedication to the bit here. I don't like it. It doesn't. There's a part of me where this does feel like a bit, and I'm all for it. I'm in love with the bit. But that, like, okay, let's just go balls to the wall on every single one of these songs. And I feel like Wastelands could have been any other kind of sound from them, but they went with, the harder approach for it to be included in this album. And so far, it's been rock solid consistency. Can it get crazier? Can it get heavier? We'll see. Next track, Until It's Gone.
Needs a space to burn, a breath to build a glow. I've heard it said 1,000 times, but now I know that you don't know what you till it's gone.
I'm having a blast with this album. Just like the little outro moments are perfect. Holy hell. Yeah, this one actually, I felt quite comfortable listening to this song, and I'll tell you exactly why. It'd be a shame if I just said that and moved on to the next song, wouldn't it be? Yeah. No. You get transformative commentary here, if you want to call it that. That's what I call it. I felt comfortable with this because it's not like I haven't felt that this has been Linkin Park up until now. We have Mike. We have Chester. They're going balls to the wall. But this was kind of the first song that brought back, like, or at least that I've noticed, right? Very prominent kind of synth sound that I've grown accustomed to hearing from them. And that, was featured very heavily in, Minutes to Midnight, Thousand Suns, especially Minutes to Midnight, an album of theirs that I kind of hold quite dear to me as far as, how brave it was for them to change up their sound a little bit more drastically than they had done in the past, as well as the songwriting and the instrumentation. It's not just the piano. I think in the first two albums you had a lot of piano, but bringing that synth in and really utilizing a lot of the electronic sounds to their advantage. This one brings us a little bit home. So I don't want to say that this is like the first Linkin Park song that I've heard so far, but I think this song is maybe more of an accurate representation of perhaps the broader sound of their catalog. If you just take every single song that they've ever made up until this point, at least, and you kind of averaged it out, it might sound a little something like this. So maybe in some way this is the most mid Linkin Park song or most average. And also, quick little aside, if something is bad, it's not mid. Okay? Mid is okay, yeah. I don't know. To me, people use bad and mid as if like they're the same thing, and that's just like not the case. That's a syntax thing. I get it. It's nerdy. Doesn't make a lot of sense for you to listen to me talk about this, but just believe me when I say it. Jerry is so mid. God damn it. All right. Anyway, we're moving on. Next up, we have Rebellion featuring Daron. I can never say this dude's name right. Daron Malakian. Malakian's, Malakian, Daron Malakian. He's the other voice and lead guitarist of System of a Down. Respect to some legends. Put some respect on that name. I know people have wanted me to react to System of a Down. I know System of a Down. I was actually terrified of System of a Down for a while. Like when I was growing up, I'm not the biggest Slipknot fan, right? But I would listen to like Psychosocial and Before I Forget and watch the videos. Something about like the theatrics of Slipknot, even though it was like terrifying, wasn't as scary as System of a Down was. Like System of a Down, I was like, what the fuck am I listening to? This is terrifying. It wasn't until I graduated college that I got into System of a Down and I was like, oh, these boys are geniuses. They're actually geniuses. This is some of the best music I've ever listened to. And I do like some of Daron's solo work as well. So let's get into what he has in store with Linkin Park in Rebellion. Oh, we're going totally System of a Down here. Oh, that's Daron. That's Daron.
I want an ocean to wash my confusion clean. I can't resolve this empty story. I can't repair the damage done. We acted out, we wear the colors defined by the rebellion. Rebellion. We lost before the start. Rebellion. Rebellion. One by one, we fall apart. We want imitations of. We are the fortunate ones who never face oppression's gun.
Man. Yeah, so this one was honestly the best of both worlds. If you're a Linkin Park fan, if you're a Sode fan, this is probably right up your alley. I love it when a good crossover, when a good feature collaboration is truly that. It brings out the best in both groups, or both parties, really, in like whatever it is. And I felt like this one did it here. You got the start of the song sounding so reminiscent of System of a Down, but it's produced like a Linkin Park sound. You know, this isn't this doesn't have Rick Rubin's grubby little hands all over it, so to speak. You know, it still has a Linkin Park sound with a System of a Down kind of composition, I suppose. Outside of like, you know, like the pre-chorus, you know, that I felt was very Linkin Park here. And, you know, I think given the lyrics here, you know, the themes going on, is another tip of the hat to System of a Down, right? This idea of, you know, holding up those who are oppressed or speaking out on their behalf. Actually, yeah, no, at this point, Linkin Park isn't the most foreign to that, but that's kind of the name of System of a Down's game. I wish System of a Down would go back to just making rock songs when they get so political. Go woke, go broke. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear it. So we've had a couple great collaborations so far, a few even, and we got one more coming through. But before we get to that, we have the 9th track, Mark the Graves.
There's a fragile game we play with the ghost of yesterday. If we can't let go, we'll never say goodbye. No trace of what remains from the pain I put you through. In my carelessness, I left you in the dark. And the blood may wash away the scar. The light, the demon.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That one rocked. You know, I had said at the start, right, towards the start, that, and now we're towards the end, that while this might not be the most dynamic album per se in terms of its pacing, where we have those peaks and valleys, those spaces to kind of breathe, outside of the summoning, you know, that minute and 1 second track, we haven't really had much time to breathe. And that I said that maybe we just get more of the dynamic moments, those peaks and valleys in the individual songs and how they're composed. And I think that's largely been true. I think maybe the past couple songs haven't quite been the case, but this one certainly is. And there's not a lot to it lyrically, but just this little line here: in the dark, in the light, nothing left, nothing right. At first I was like, you know what? I don't know if I like that, but the more I think about this line, the more I like it. In the dark, you know, you can't see if there's anything to the left of you or to the right of you. So nothing left or right in a very literal sense. That's how I kind of took it immediately. And I was like, well, that's kind of corny. But maybe in another sense, if you're in the light, there's nothing left. Everything is gone and nothing's okay. Nothing's correct. Nothing is right. And it's like that soft little wordplay that I don't, it's not the deepest thing. And I honestly could see that if your eyes are rolling right now, you might go, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. Like, that's really stupid. I don't know. I kind of like that. Mainly just because the composition with this one was crazy. So we don't have a ton of lyrics, but we have like 6 different parts of 6 different songs in this one. So like I said, this song was incredibly dynamic. I don't know if, you know, at the start of it, all of the sounds that they were combining sounded right to me, but by the end of the song, I really wouldn't have had it any other way. And I know that the chat's been glazing this dude, and I haven't really said much about him. Forgive me as I forget the name of our bassist here, but the bass in this song was mixed very well. When it came in a little bit towards the second half of the song, you know, I threw the stank face on. It was just terrific, especially because they're playing with seemingly so many different time signatures here, or if not time signatures, then different tempos. And this song was just a ride. Instrumental. Okay, so right off the bat, ladies and gentlemen, this album desperately needed a slower song like that. Not to say that I haven't been enjoying it, but I think this album definitely called for a slower track, or it could call for all very fast, aggressive songs, as most of them have been up until this point. Like I said, we were kind of missing some of the piano. Maybe there's been piano that I've missed. But we got it here. It was kind of like the focal point, which is weird considering this one's featuring Tom Morello. We got Tom Morello in this somewhere. He was in there somewhere. Just playing, I guess he was just the guitar portion of this. But, you know, when I see featuring Tom Morello, I'm thinking of just that quintessential deconstructed guitar playing style that he has. Maybe a little bit of funk, right? Maybe a little bit more of a jumpier kind of metal groove. And that's not at all what we got here. So defying expectations is what this album has kind of been to me, for the better. So that was actually kind of nice. I think we really needed something slow to kind of pin us back down as we begin our final descent to the end of this album. All right, so we'll move on. The Final Masquerade.
Tearing me apart with words you wouldn't say. Suddenly tomorrow's moment horizon was brighter yesterday. Shadows floating over, the skies began to fade. You said it was forever, but then it slipped to the final masquerade. The light on the horizon. Oh, standing at the end of the final masquerade.
Really liking this section of the album so far. Like I said with the last, let me just show you this. Like I said with the interlude with Drawbar, entering a softer section of the album. That song wasn't, this song, Final Masquerade, wasn't the softest thing from Linkin Park that we've ever heard. But in comparison to the rest of the album, it's a nice way to kind of break up the heavier, more chaotic, aggressive nature that has really been at the forefront of this album. I mean, you call it the hunting party, and goddamn, I feel like they're out for blood almost, just with how like they're playing with so much purpose. Really, again, this is more of a ballad of sorts from Chester, and I was hoping to get something like this earlier in the album. I think it probably would have worked a lot better earlier in the album instead of maybe hiding it away. I think maybe Drawbar and Final Masquerade would sit pretty comfortably as far as how an album could be paced, somewhere in between tracks 4 and 7. But here it is. I really kind of liking what they did. It maybe out of necessity for them, because again, they are an album band. That's even say what you will about Living Things, say what I will about Living Things, and I will say things about Living Things. I will always appreciate their approach to the concept of an album. And I feel like out of necessity, they knew they couldn't get away with just doing all balls to the wall shit. They're a little bit smarter than that. I think they care too much. And again, this was one that I think you could throw on any Linkin Park album and it would be just fine. This is another one where it's bringing kind of that, I don't know how to describe it. Like there is like a sullen optimism to some Linkin Park songs that I just can't quite place, where I don't know if it's maybe if you feel as though you're an outcast, that maybe other outcasts listen to Linkin Park and you can kind of, wrap your head a little bit more closely around these ideas of maybe isolation, feeling like you're alone, feeling as though you've been betrayed, and, in like getting what's yours. And it's not so much that it's all optimistic, but there's this certain energy that goes through their music. And I find Final Masquerade here to be one of those songs where it's things are bad, but it's not completely over. We said it was forever, but then it slipped away, standing at the end of the Final Masquerade. So it's not necessarily that it's already over. It's maybe the end's about to begin, and, Masquerade, it's, we're hiding something. This is something that should be kept behind closed doors. I'm putting out a mask and I'm trying my best. I've never really been able to pin that down about Linkin Park, but that is an aspect of Linkin Park that I've really appreciated since, where maybe it's just their use of major chords tends to sound a little bit happier. But for a band that goes over a lot of, maybe unsavory themes and a lot of unsavory aspects of the human condition, there is this optimism that I really do appreciate from their music. And I think Final Masquerade is no different. All right, so we are here at the finish line with the longest track on the record at 6 minutes, 35 seconds. We have A Line in the Sand to close out the hunting party.
Today, we stood on the wall.
Okay, Mike.
We laughed at the sun, we laughed at the guns, we laughed at it all. I look for a sign with flames in my hands, a line in the sand between yours. Another day, your truth will come. You're gonna pay for what you've done. Don't get what's yours and face your wrong. I've never been a coward. I'd never seen blood. You had sold me an ocean, and I was lost in the flood. We were counting on a leader, and we were driven by need. We couldn't take temptation, and we were blinded by greed. You were steady as a sniper.
First off, undeniable with that. We've seen tracks in this album that, could have just been any other Linkin Park song on any other album. This one was this whole album kind of put into one song, I feel. It starts out with terrific vocals from Mike. Right. I really liked Mike's approach on this one. He was the calmer voice here. Obviously, Chester goes crazy. So from a vocal standpoint, this is everything I've wanted and more out of Linkin Park. And then you get to this running theme that we found of how dynamic these songs can be by putting the peaks and valleys in the songs themselves, not necessarily the album as a whole. However, you could make the argument, and it might even be valid, that, the peaks are obviously much more apparent just by how vicious the metal is in this album. And I think if Linkin Park's metal bona fides weren't already apparent before this song in the album, or even just this album, they were at this point. I mean, I was just going crazy. I don't know how they do it. I honestly, fuck it. This is the conclusion part, right? Yeah, so this is the conclusion part of this video, because there's no way I could talk about the last song, A Line in the Sand, without kind of talking about this album in general. Yeah, this was fantastic. I think when people say that, this isn't their favorite Linkin Park album, or how it's one of their least favorites, I can totally see where you're coming from. I mean, wholeheartedly. Right. I've had a lot of folks in chat and a lot of people in the comments of at least the last Linkin Park reaction saying that this wasn't one of their favorites, or, there's always a couple of people saying that they really love this album, but I'm just interested in this album in particular because I had never heard really so many people say like one album was so bad. Of course, after, Meteora, there's a lot of people saying, oh, okay, these are the last two good albums. not knowing that Minutes to Midnight exists. But I can totally see why this might not be your cup of tea Linkin Park wise, because they had done a good job at maybe creating more emotional, softer kind of sounds that were inherently more accessible to the general public, especially when they went like a little bit more electronic. You know, you get a song like Burn It Down, for example, which I referenced already. I think this is another brave move by them to just switch up their sound even from that, because they were finding, you know, commercial success off of that kind of sound. So let me know what the backstory was for this one, as far as like why they went so much harder, but they went hard in a way that's different from Hybrid Theory and Meteora. They just did. I mean, they were calling upon different genres of metal, different subgenres of metal to be included in this. This isn't, none of it felt particularly too new metal-y. Some of it did. Other parts of it, I felt that it was a little bit more thrashy. It was a little bit more power metal. But even within those songs, you got these great either breakdowns or softer bits. And around all of those heavier kinds of songs, you had songs like Final Masquerade. You had songs like Mark the Graves, which was just crazy. You know, and other songs that I thought could just be on any other Linkin Park album. And you bring the punk sound back with War. So in a way, they are bringing new sounds back, but I don't think that this was a step behind or like going back. I think okay, we want to go heavier. What worked heavier? What can we build upon? Ladies and gentlemen, I love this. This was, it was good. And also, again, I don't know if this is just my experience. I know that people really liked Rob's drumming on this one. I found it to be perfectly adequate. He's not a bad drummer by any means, but you know, I've always engaged with Linkin Park as maybe just one wall of sound with Chester and Mike at the front of it. Maybe I should go back and maybe pay a little bit more attention to the Phoenix's bass and Rob's drumming. But I know I've given Rob his credit before. You know, he does really like that little like marching beat on the snare. Maybe he hates his snare. I don't know. Now, this is incredibly personal, why I really like this album as well, because I think this is the first Linkin Park album where I haven't heard a song off of it. This was all brand new to me. You know, even, I think every album up until this point, the past 5 albums, I've recognized at least one song from the album that was just like the radio hit off the album, and this one felt inherently more interesting to me because it was a breath of fresh air every single time. So, you know, for you Linkin Park fans, obviously you've had so many years to settle in with this album, to put it on whenever you want to have a relationship that is your relationship with this album. Everybody's got a different relationship to a different album. And for me, this one was cool because this was the first brand new Linkin Park album to me. Honestly, I think, and it's weird how it works out like that because this album's been out for a while, right? But if I haven't heard it, it's new to me. So you can hear like a song that you're familiar with off an album, like, oh yeah, no, I've heard this song. But for some reason that kind of dates it. And this was exciting to me because this for all intents and purposes was a brand new Linkin Park album. Never heard a single one of these songs. And to that extent, I was very excited to see the features, even though they weren't so apparent outside of Rebellion. Rebellion, you know, had System of a Down flavors all up and down it. Interesting to hear maybe a different side of Tom Morello with Drawbar, but I think Drawbar is really just an interlude into Final Masquerade, and those two songs are just paired so well together. And really helped maybe break up some of the more louder chaos of the album. I will say, I like how they're placed next to each other. I think they should have been placed a little bit earlier in the album to break it up, maybe around the halfway point. But maybe that's what is expected. That's what I was expecting. Maybe Linkin Park does the unexpected. Maybe they do the unexpected. So that was my reaction to The Hunting Party by Linkin Park. Obviously, by the end of the video, I guess you can kind of tell that I enjoyed this one a little bit more than Living Things, to say the least. But I think we're over hating Linkin Park in general after this song. I'll never forget that hater that I was, and that's the important part, right? More importantly, please do not let me know your thoughts on my thoughts down in the comments below. Did you hate this take? Did you love this take? Did you like my perspective here? I want to know what you have to say. If you ever want to catch us live, make sure you click one of the links down in the description. And if you ever want to see any of these videos uncut before they come out on YouTube, go ahead and check out my Patreon where you can get just that for $1. And if you ever want your name on any of these credits, there is a tier for that as well. Also, please let me know what other artist or band you want me to react to next. With that said, I've been Jerry Bees. You've been awesome. Take it easy. I'm gonna crack my back. My back hurts.
Diggity dog. Breaking. Diggity dog. Breaking.